Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. I want to talk to you about Avalanche today, about the new platform that we built at Ava Labs that went live only 3 weeks ago. So let's go to the next slide, if you will. So crypto is big. I need not go into too much detail on this. All these numbers are incredibly old, and they're not that important anyway. But the bottom line is crypto is here to stay. It's an incredibly strong field. Let's go to the next slide. The sum total amount of money in this area is enormously big. I think that's very, very clear. The amount of VC investment that has gone into the area is about $20 billion, with about another $20 billion of organic investments. That's people like you and me who have decided to put their hard-earned money into these technologies. Even Facebook is in this game. Even PayPal, as of yesterday, is making motions. Yeah, and you see more and more institutional finance institutions going into this field. So the era of digital assets is just starting. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, but what's the current landscape? Okay, so here is where we are, though. We see about 6,000 different coins, and all of these coins are pretty much the same damn thing. They are not innovative. They are not differentiated. They are all trying to copy the one man with the one good idea. That man is Satoshi Nakamoto or whoever is behind it. And that one idea is Bitcoin. Everybody is trying to be money. Everybody is trying to be a store of value. Everybody is trying to compete with the dollar, the fiat currencies of the world. That is not what we are doing at Avalanche. That is not our goal. That's a worthy goal. That's a very hard goal. And I wish Bitcoin much luck with what they're trying to do. And that is not our goal. Now, if you turn around and look at the other people, there are a couple of others that are trying to do things that are slightly different. They took the Satoshi vision. They added a small tweak. They added, for example, the ability to have Turing complete script, which gives rise to smart contracts. And that gives you a computational platform. That is Ethereum. So that's fine too. And that is also not what we're trying to do in Avalanche. And I want to tell you about what exactly it is that we're trying to do. Now, before I get there, so what does that lead to? These undifferentiated products of everybody trying to copy the one good idea leaves us with an explosion of crypto products. Many of them are already failures. Many of them are actually so sad that they collect money. They go to market with a mainnet and they lay off their programmers. Okay, it's that bad, this area. And most of these avenues are terminal. They're not enablers. They're not there for other people to build new things on. And all of them are speculative. The value in this space is mostly speculative. And yet we live in an unprecedented macroeconomic climate. National economies have shut down, as you all know. Astronomical amounts of debt are being created. Many weak companies, banks, and some national economies will collapse. And the flight to unseizable assets is already taking place. So let's go to the next. So now, there is a vision. And that vision, as initially articulated by Bitcoin and copied badly by a bunch of other coins, is that of blockchains that hold highly valuable assets that cannot be stopped or seized by anyone. Now, if you actually think about how much value there is, the money use case, the Bitcoin case, or the fiat use case is actually a tiny fraction of the value out there. It's, as I said, a worthy use case, but it's not the only use case. There's so much more value out there that is not in greenback form or euro form. So what am I referring to? I'm referring to things that are financial contracts, that are real estate that is owned and operated by digital assets, backed by digital assets, fractionalized assets. I'm talking about commodities represented by digital assets that altogether come to many hundreds of trillions of dollars of value. And none of those are properly or can be properly represented on a blockchain. There are some major impediments on that path. Impediment number one is scale. The first generation platforms that we're all familiar with simply cannot support trades of digital assets at global scale. They go to maybe 3 transactions per second or 10 transactions per second, maybe a tiny bit more, but that's where they conk out. Layer 2s can perhaps help, but it's my opinion as the person having built the world's fastest layer 2 is that the problem with layer 2s is coordination. And the thing that blockchains solve is actually that coordination problem of bringing together parties that don't know how to come together. And layer 2s today suffer from that coordination problem and thus have not actually succeeded. Point me to one layer 2 that actually has been successful. You cannot. None of them. There's a lot of, I've read so much about ZK rollups, all sorts of other rollups, about the Lightning Network, etc. And I've built the T-Chain network myself. That's the fastest that uses secure hardware for its performance. None of these solutions are going to be, yes, sure, they're going to help. I'm not actually downplaying that, I'm not saying they're bad technologies, but they're not here to actually address the core problem, which is that we need a foundation that can handle digital assets at these large scales. The second problem, of course, is that all these networks offer the same lowest common denominator service. I alluded to this before. They all copy it. They get one coin, they sell the coin. That coin has one virtual machine that defines how it behaves and one network. And that coin doesn't have a jurisdiction. It has no legal backing. It has no foundation. If you're an enterprise with assets in your hand, you're issuing bonds, you're issuing all sorts of financial instruments, and you want to do it on a blockchain. Which blockchain is it going to be? Well, it's going to have to be a blockchain. Your legal department will tell you that it's going to be a blockchain on which you control the full life cycle of the asset. And I'm here to tell you that the way these systems are structured, none of them give you that particular ability. They build an extra legal system. It's great for the Bitcoin use case. It is not good for the use cases I am interested in, where I think the greatest amount of value lies untapped today. And then the last and final problem that they face with is governance. These systems need to change and evolve with the changing needs of users. It's preposterous to think that today we could come up with a plan that is good for eternity, an economic plan that's good for eternity. All of you will remember these communist regimes that used to have 5-year plans and how out of whack they would be by the 4th year with the reality, and they would change it every 5th year. And of course, it led to nothing but poverty. So we need systems that can evolve as the dynamic macro environment around us evolves with, in the blink of an eye, as you all know, as it did this year. Let's go to the next slide. So let me give you some background on the technological foundations and on the scale problem. This is a big area, the distributed systems area, the area of my expertise. It's not an area that's been around for too long. It's been around for only 45 years. And for the longest time, academics worked on consensus protocols that are based on voting. These protocols are called classical protocols. Barbara Liskov and Leslie Lamport, 2 heroes of mine, received Turing Awards for the work that they did, starting in the 70s, extending all the way to recently. The best of the classical protocols is a protocol called Hot Stuff that was designed by the lead author was a student of mine, Ted Yin, who is now currently working with me on Ava Labs on Avalanche. So these protocols are great. They existed. We knew all about them, and they're making a resurgence. I'm going to come back to them. They're making a resurgence now. And Satoshi knew about these protocols. All of these protocols are inherently fragile. They require the collection of votes, and they typically require, by one node, the collection of votes from every other node. So that inherently limits their scale. So you cannot have, for example, Libra, the best of these protocols, is aiming to scale to about 100 validators. So the idea here is that we're going to tear down the financial infrastructure and build a new one with 100 people in charge. Who are those people? Zuckerberg and his friends. That's crazy. Okay, so that's not going to go anywhere. It's technologically limited. It doesn't scale in the number of participants to the protocol. Now, Satoshi knew about these. He's no dummy. He knew the existence of all these protocols, and he said, they're unsuitable fundamentally for what I want to do. and he came up with his protocol based on building the longest chain using proof of work. We call this the Nakamoto protocol. He doesn't have a Turing Award. He has 1 million Bitcoins. That's what we suspect he does. So that's wonderful. He built something really cool. And there the field lay. And people started to understand that while this Nakamoto protocol is open and robust and has a bunch of very nice properties, it also suffers from lack of scale. And to get that scale, they started to come up with various ideas. And most of these, not most, all of those ideas come down to recycling an old academic protocol from the 70s sometimes, and in some cases from the 90s, most cases from the 90s. Recycling one of these old protocols, putting some blockchain makeup on top, and serving it to the masses. Look at Cosmos. The main paper behind Cosmos is Tendermint, which is based on PBFT, which is what published in 1999. Okay, these are all old systems. We know about these systems. So look at ETH2O, what it's trying to do, classical. Look at any other system that's trying to do proof of stake. They are typically trying to do classical. All of these systems are fragile and limited in the number of participants. And yet a big breakthrough happened in 2018. A group that calls itself Team Rocket published a paper called Avalanche, and they outlined a brand new protocol based on subsampled voting, where a node does not have to contact every other node for its votes, where a node can probabilistically, but with very high assurance, ensure finality and complete uncensorable finalization of transactions. Let's go to the next slide. So I don't want to belabor this point. Proof of work protocols, Nakamoto protocols are wonderful in many ways because they're robust, but they have long confirmation times, as you know, about an hour for Bitcoin. They have low throughput, and they tend to centralize. How many miners are there in Bitcoin? I don't really know, but I know how many mining pools there are. It's a few dozen. Okay, so we make fun of EOS for 21 block producers, and there is Bitcoin where I think it was, last time I checked, it was 19 mining pools. And within mining pools, there are more miners, sure, but how many of those are there? Sum it up, and we'll come up with a number that is still not that large. And of course, there's the energy consumption problem. It leads to a leak of value to the tune of billions out of the system into the hands of the power companies. So and of course, it melts the poles. You may not care, I do, and that's not a good thing to be doing to the planet. Let's go on. As I said, many people are trying to do proof of stake protocols. These are recycled ideas. They cannot scale beyond a few hundred validators. They trade off decentralization. Can I get very high speeds if I centralize everything on my laptop? You bet I can. That's typically what these people are doing. And it's really fun to plot people's claims over time as they approach mainnet. I remember one system that claimed 1 million TPS down to 500,000, down to 100,000, go down immediately to 10,000, and ultimately they released a system that gets about 300 transactions per second. Why do they get 300 transactions per second? Because they lack the expertise to build the back end. They go and use LevelDB in the back end of their systems. They're using the same database as everyone else. I know the exact upper limit of what that database can do, and it's a very, very low limit. And therefore, they're going to never be able to break through that barrier. And all of these systems are, of course, fragile and subject to breaking apart. We saw many of these proof of stake systems stop. We saw many of them fall apart over time. Let's go to the next slide. So new algorithmic foundations are necessary, and Avalanche is a brand new consensus protocol family. It's not just something that we took from, whatever, like the past history and put some makeup on top. It's a brand new protocol, works completely differently from everyone else. It's leaderless. It is based on something called metastability. So it creates a universe among the nodes where the nodes are, so to speak, unhappy as long as there's no decision. And they get happier and go into a lower energy state as they tend towards a bigger and bigger decision. And it starts out like a small little snowflake rolling down a hill, which has a lot of potential energy at the top of the hill. As it rolls down, the energy is dissipated, becomes a happier but bigger snowball. And at the very end, very bottom of the hill, you have an avalanche where all the snow has piled onto one decision, and it has decided to go in that direction. Did Alice pay Bob or did Alice pay Charlie? Well, the decision has been made. It has rolled down. You now have an avalanche telling you it went in this direction. Let's go to the next slide. So this protocol has incredible properties. It is robust like Nakamoto. It has low latency like the classical protocols. Decisions in Avalanche, we keep advertising, they take 1 to 2 seconds. In reality, they take far less than a second. Like it's about the blink of an eye, a slow blink of an eye, 0.2 seconds or so with the current network that we have. It's very high throughput. I never thought I would live to see the day, but our network, without compromising decentralization, in a system with 2,000 active participants to the system, is able to achieve speeds that are 3 times faster than Visa. So that's, I think, a monumental achievement that, as I said, I didn't think was going to be possible because I understood classical and I understood Nakamoto. But it's because Avalanche works differently that that's possible. It's lightweight. It can be run on a cell phone. Our current node does not do that yet, but it's something on our roadmap and something we're really excited about. And it consumes very little energy. There is no mining involved. You do not need to be in bed with a power plant. You do not need to be located next to Niagara Falls or a nuclear power plant, and you do not need to be in China stealing money from the power grid, etc. You can actually do this on your own and add meaningfully to the decentralization of the network, and for that you get rewarded. One of the interesting things about this protocol is that it can withstand adversaries larger than 51%. The safety of the network is unaffected if even when the adversary is larger than 51%. Liveness is affected, but safety is not affected. And of course, it scales like no other. Let's go to the next slide. So I mentioned the efficiency, and I talked to you about what makes it so fast. It's the fact that every node doesn't need to talk to every other node. It polls a small subset, and it creates a dynamic that settles down only when everybody is preferring the same transaction. And one of the interesting things about this, let's go to the next slide, is, so of course, this achieves incredibly low latencies. So compared to Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other recent academic work, which gets latencies on the order of a minute, it's 50 seconds for Algorand, Avalanche ends up getting latencies on the order of a second. Throughput is very, very high. Let's go on to the next slide. And the security is incredibly high. So Avalanche can accommodate 10,000s to millions of participants. You and I could meaningfully be the Jihan Woos. What Jihan Woo is to Bitcoin, you and I could be to Avalanche. We have a meaningful voice in this system. Byzantine tolerance is configurable. The smaller the attacker is, the faster the system is. And it's incredibly strong. So the cost to attack this system is far higher than classical. And it's robust. It can handle imprecision and membership. That's a technical point I don't have time to go into right now. So let's go on to the next slide. One of the most interesting, or second big things, I've focused until now on the consensus protocol. The consensus protocol is very important. It determines all of your performance parameters and also much of your architecture. But there is a second big breakthrough, and I've been talking about this for years on end. And it stems from the observation that every asset requires a different kind of handling. Okay, so if you're at an enterprise and you want to issue financial instruments, or you have some real estate you want to fractionalize and sell to people overseas, well, then you have to have a different kind of behavior for the resulting tokens. The current systems we have are designed to be extra legal. They have been designed to not fit into any existing legal system. All of their problems stem from that lack of integration. And they, as a result, provide a poor foundation for building reliable services on top. What we are doing in Avalanche is we're building a platform of platforms, or a network of networks. Avalanche supports multiple virtual machines, not just the Avalanche virtual machine, but also the Ethereum virtual machine, with WASM support planned, with other virtual machines also planned and in the works. We provide full control over the digital life cycle of assets. Let's go on to the next slide. I mentioned that point earlier. Okay. So it's the Avalanche vision is that we will support many different kinds of coins. We already support many different kinds of coins. We've been in existence for just 3 weeks, and there are hundreds of coins already on the system. Arbitrary tokens can be created for each asset class. You can have stable coins. You can have, as I said, fractionalized real estate. You can have income sharing agreements, and so on and so forth, all with their own scripting languages, and also all with their own, what we call subnetworks. So you can have a coin that's governed by the rules that are specific to that coin. To validate this coin, you have to agree to this agreement. This is how we will arbitrate when code is found out to be buggy, for example. Someone can say this: I have a smart contract. I did my best in making sure it's not buggy, but if it is buggy, then I want the network to go along with the following set of arbitration rules. They can express this, or they can say things like, the data belonging to this blockchain is subject to GDPR rules, and they can build a network of nodes that will uphold the GDPR. So this allows a network that in turn allows many subnetworks that coexist. And most importantly, Avalanche stakers benefit from the value generated by these coins. To an Ethereum miner, all of the coins are just code. They don't even know that they're generating value on top. In Avalanche, they know what they're doing, and they can extract value commensurate with the services they provide to those coins. For example, real estate coins will require archival processes from the validators, and the validators can then charge extra for that service that they provide. Let's go on to the next slide. And finally, and most importantly, Avalanche's operation lends itself to natural governance. The system, in essence, is a crowd oracle. It's a way to poll the crowd for their opinion, and it works by polling that crowd repeatedly. Now, the observation here is that key parameters are typically baked into every other system. I mentioned how impossible it is to plan for eternity, or even 5 years, or even a year in advance. In Avalanche, key parameters like the amount of minimum stake, the minimum staking period, the minting rate, and so forth are subject to on-chain governance. What this means is that you and I have a say in our financial future. We get to determine how the coin should behave and how the system should behave. And most importantly, some things are not subject to decision. For example, the maximum number of AVAX coins, it's a hard-capped coin, that number is not subject to governance. But the rate at which we mint today, the rate at which we approach that hard limit, is something that we can change. Today, for example, to compete with what's happening out there, you might decide, okay, well, we should up the reward rate to attract validators. And over time, you can say, well, let's lower it to, for example, boost the price of the coin, and so on. So these are all things that are completely doable within the Avalanche system. Okay, so this allows us to build a centralized bank in a sense where we are the bank. We are the central bank. In Bitcoin, Satoshi was the central bank, and it's just fixed algorithmically for all time. In Avalanche, that is something that's subject to change such that it can match what's happening in the external world. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So, final thoughts. The internet was introduced in 1962. The internet then and the internet today look nothing alike. It's just the addressing is different, the architecture is different, the number of wires connected to my laptop right now is different. Everything about it has changed. The tech stack looks nothing like it compared to what I saw when I first started studying computer science versus what I run today on my laptop. It's night and day. Crypto is no different. So crypto represents a natural evolution of money from archaic fiat-based models to internet-native value creation. And it's a natural evolution of assets from, again, archaic physical things, physical goods, to digital assets that can be created, transferred online, stored online, and made unseizable. Now, there's a great vision there that Satoshi outlined for the one use case that we have extended to a wide variety of use cases. We differ fundamentally from the coins that came before us, and we address the three big challenges that we see in the path of the success of blockchains. Those three big challenges are scale and performance. You gotta be able to go to thousands of transactions per second and above, or else you're just not in the game. You're a proof of concept. You are a proving ground for somebody else who knows how to reach that level. Second challenge is usability and interoperability. You got to be flexible. You can't be one size fits all. You can't be, I'm an X maximalist. We don't have a notion of Avalanche maximalism. Avalanche is a platform of platforms. It's the layer underneath. If you like something a lot, then you can build that thing as a subnetwork on Avalanche, as we will demonstrate to the world in the coming months. Many existing coins can be easily usurped and put on top of Avalanche quite trivially. And finally, the third big challenge is flexibility and governance. So this is a very big problem. I mentioned how hard it is to plan for for any kind of a futuristic scenario, let alone for eternity. And you need to have systems that can dynamically change their behavior without putting anybody in charge. And that's exactly what we've built. Crypto, I believe, will change the financial world. It will not change it in a small fashion. It is not going to be a transparent change in the back office. If it were, it'd be my domain, and it'd be other geeky people like me, and we would do it transparently. Nobody would even know. It will change it so fundamentally that existing people who collect money by virtue of where they have situated themselves without bringing additional value into the system, they will find their existence threatened. It's an existential threat. At the same time, it's a huge opportunity for startups. And we're just establishing the right foundations now. I hope I laid out how my vision is different from everyone else's and what we're going after with Avalanche and how it's different from every single one of the thousands of coins out there. If you're interested, do check out avalanche.org and or check out Avalanche Coin on Twitter and follow us to see more news from this exciting platform. We've been around for only 3 weeks so far, and have had a very successful launch to date and have a thriving community. Come join. Thank you.